I mean, the concept of modernization, the concept of evolution, the concept of adapting, the new things that are available are inevitable. I think again, that kind of us as consumers, like we lay witness to changing landscapes around us where you see companies that are winning and companies that are losing. And many situations, the companies that are losing are late to adopt, technology. So it's inevitable. It's going to happen regardless.
Hi, everyone, and thank you for listening. I'm your host, Kerrie Jordan. Welcome to our show where we hear from manufacturing and supply chain leaders who are driving the future of the make, move, and sell industries. Today, I'm speaking with Dan Klepack, Chief Supply Chain Officer with DSG, which stands for Dakota Supply Group. Now, DSG is a leading wholesale distributor specializing in electrical, plumbing, HVAC, communications, utility, automation, waterworks, and on-site sewer and well industries. I'm looking forward to this conversation because my guest, Dan Klepack, is a highly accomplished supply chain and operations leader. He has extensive experience in optimizing supply chain processes and enhancing operational efficiency. Actually, prior to his role as Chief Supply Chain Officer at DSG, he's held leadership roles at Target Corporation and Lockheed Martin. So he brings a wealth of experience from prominent industry leaders. Dan, welcome and thank you for joining the show.
Kerrie, thank you so much. That you've done excellent research. That was a great introduction. I appreciate it.
Of course, of course. Well, let's first get to know you. Would love to learn about your journey, and also interested in hearing how this journey from manufacturing to retail to distribution has sort of shaped your overall approach to supply chain leadership.
I get really excited to talk about it. It's a question that I get often. I mean, if you do look at my resume, it was to your point, it was a time in the defense industry. At one point, I was building fighter jets, and then somehow segued into Target and doing supply chain automation. And at one point, I was working on food processes to try to get food to the sales floor. And then, thankfully, I'm blessed now to be at DSG working as a in supply chain and an industrial supplier. What's been exciting there is kind of taking the best pieces of each company along the way and then applying them to their current company where the defense industry excels is using operations discipline. Seconds and pennies matter. They're government contracts and they're highly scrutinized. So seconds and pennies matter. And the operations discipline to be able to do that is nothing less than world class. So be able to take that discipline to Target where you're hyper close to a customer, a very vocal, loud customer. You don't just hear about it in a Monday meeting. You hear about it on the news and in the press. If something goes wrong, you learn really quickly, what the voice of the customer is and how it matters and how it has to influence the thing that you do. And then being able to take kind of all of that in a nice, bucket and bring it over to DSG where you're close to a customer and you're close to operations discipline and now leading supply chain and apply it all together has been a lot of fun. It's kind of a capstone of 25 years of experience into bucketed into one place. So it's a lot of fun to figure out how to apply it appropriately. What I have learned is that a process is a process. As you think through manufacturing operations is regardless of what you're building at the end of the day, there's a right way to do it. And there's a standard operating procedure that needs to be written to do it. And there's a set of data that governs the success of that process. From fighter jets to building a sandwich to leading a supply chain, a process is a process and the disciplines transfer seamlessly.
That's really interesting because I can imagine with the variety of different types of projects and initiatives and products that you've worked on. It's interesting because I feel like what you've learned from building supplier like from fighter jets and then going to sandwiches, as you said, within Target, you have to think differently. You have to be able to apply those lessons, but think differently in terms of the process and what could be leveraged from organization to organization. And I feel like that focus on quality,
Yep.
accuracy really matters. So, can I ask you about DSG? Would you tell us a little bit more about DSG, where you're located, what you do?
Yep. So you summarized it super well. You took a lot of the words out of my mouth, but DSG at its core is an industrial supplier. Been around for 125 years. Most exciting in DSG is that it's an employee-owned company, so it's an ESOP. So everybody here at DSG has ownership stake in the success of DSG, that's a piece that's really fun to be a part of. So as we think through making changes and we think through adjustments and we think through strategies, everybody's invested in it here. Financially, emotionally, culturally, everybody has stake in the success of DSG. So at its core, it's an employee-owned company. We are located headquarters in Plymouth, Minnesota. We have a big footprint in Fargo, North Dakota. 62 branches in total, spanning as far west as Montana, as far east as Michigan, and as far south as call it kind of Nebraska, Illinois, Iowa area. So kind of got the upper Midwest, the central Midwest covered for the time being. But what's exciting with DSG is it is a growth company, and watch for us in the news and the press as we're looking to grow into new markets, new states, and figure out where the future of DSG looks. But you summarized it well: electrical, industrial automation, plumbing, HVAC, waterworks, on-site sewer well, etc. So a variety of different segments which kind of create their own unique challenges. It's not one product, one category. It is a diverse set of categories that our customers crave, but from a supply chain perspective, creates some interesting challenges.
Well, you're no stranger to diverse categories
Mhm.
from what you've shared with us.
Yeah.
Can I ask you, how does the employee owned aspect influence decision making at DSG? I feel like that might be a unique element that characterizes DSG and the decisions that you make and how you involve employees.
Absolutely does. I mean, it's at the core of everything we do. Each decision does go back to it impacts each employee owner directly. I mean, we have regular, meetings on the big decisions that need to be made. We have, high consideration of how does this impact, how does this decision impact, the financial well-being of the company, the valuation of the company, which will impact, the employee owners at all levels. And I think what you see is, my experiences, what you see there is you see a different level of engagement at all levels. Me being in the chief supply chain officer position, I have the same level of engagement with the company as everybody. At the warehouse worker level, at the branch manager level, at the sales level, at the digital level, and we were all invested into the success of the company to the same degree. So I think what you see is a lot more ownership of the processes, ownership of success. I think you see a lot more co-creation. So as we bring problems forward, you see a lot of hands come in to help solve that problem. So it's a lot of collective problem solving, co-creation and collaboration along the way, which I think is unique. I've seen that at other companies, but I think once you're an employee owner, I think that creates a unique culture where that's not only asked for and celebrated, it's fostered by all individuals at the table. So it's fun to be a part of. I'm still learning. I've been at DSG since August. I'm still learning a little bit of it, but it's been a fun differentiator for my time here.
That's great. And for 125 years, the
Yeah.
organization has been around. So that's remarkable. So speaking of time past, I wanted to ask you about how technology has evolved. So, and not necessarily at DSG, although I would love to learn about that as well, but also
Yeah.
from your perspective and in your career, looking at supply chain and, how distribution in particular has
Mhm.
evolved from, what may have been more manual processes to, bringing in new software technologies, emerging technologies to really create a digital landscape typical to what we see today.
Yeah.
What types of software have become more common? How have you seen that evolution over time?
Yeah, this is a fun question because it kind of takes you on the mental journey of your career. And I go back to 25 years ago when I was still in college. I had an internship for a great manufacturing company called Parker Hannifin. I was an intern there for a number of years and an operations intern. And I remember, manually tracking, throughput, quality, delivery metrics on, we called them an A3 at the time. And that was the size of the sheet. It was an 11 by 17 sheet. And you tracked performance of an assembly line on a manual sheet. And that was a full-time job, tracking what happened, what were the trend lines, what were the data points, what were the defects created. That was the full-time job. And you're able to do kind of various things with it. But now fast forward 25 years later, and kind of to your point in the question, that technology and automation has really enabled us to move out of the full-time job being, can I get the data and can I track the data, to what do I do with the data? Right. So prior it was, can you tell the headline of what just happened? With technology today, and we have partnerships with Epicor and Eclipse. We're seeing technology enable us to spend less time on can I get the data and more time on what do I do with it. And really, the business has shifted to what problems am I trying to solve based on the data that's presented, and we're able to spend human capital or time on that piece of how do I solve the problems relative to the data that was presented, as opposed to can I actually get the data. And that's opened up a whole new world of efficiency and continuous improvement and problem solving and customer engagement and all the things that you want to be spending time on, as opposed to can I actually get access to the data. So it's been a journey of 25 years, kind of both ends of manually, physically writing things down, to now data is readily available, and what do you do with it is an exciting shift.
Yes. Okay. So you mentioned Epicor Eclipse, which is Thank you so much. Epicor Eclipse, for those listening, is an ERP or enterprise resource planning solution that Epicor provides for electrical distributors such as yourselves, Dan. But if I could ask, so what other sort of technologies and how do you leverage this data? Because especially I'm thinking to your point of so many
Yeah.
people across the organization are so invested in the future of DSG. How do you view empowering them with that data? How does that look? What are some ways that that data is leveraged?
Yeah, in many, many different ways. And I think, one of the things that DSG differentiates amongst, competitors in the space is our breadth of categories. So in this industry, you'll see a lot of great companies that are really good at electrical, a lot of great companies that are really great at plumbing or utility, whatever it may be. And the DSG is great at a number of different things. Technology enables us to be able to do that, right? So I think if you look inside most corporations, you have operations which craves repeatability. I go to sleep and I dream about I do A, then B, and then C, and then I repeat that process, and I do it again the next day. It's repeatability is the unicorn of what operations is trying to achieve. On the other hand, you look at sales. And sales teams like flexibility. They're close to the customer. They like to be able to insert new product lines, take product lines out, try new ideas, try new concepts. They're craving flexibility. When you put those two things together, operations and sales, they're at a healthy conflict with each other, right? So inserting new products creates challenges to the operations. Technology allows us to be flexible in that space, right? So if I look at, the technology that's available, it allows us to think through kind of supply profiles, demand profiles, how will this specific piece of this specific category, this specific product, how is it going to perform in our supply chain? What will we expect it to happen? That enables us to be flexible, to partner with the sales teams to bring those things to life much faster than we could otherwise, right? I think there was a time, prior to technology availability where operations and supply chain probably would have said, like, no, we can't do those things because it's too complicated. Today, the technology has enabled operations to be a sales enabler as opposed to that conflict point of that we've previously seen in the past. And that happens through like the Eclipse and the ERP systems, and then our logistics and transportation systems, et cetera.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Like you said, there's a balance that has to get struck between the sales and operations. And then once you hit it, it really can enable so much. There's so much opportunity. And that would be a challenge to make sure that you're hitting that balance. What other challenges do you see organizations facing when they're looking to bring in more, automation type of technologies across the business, especially supply chain?
Yeah, that's a great question because technology can be scary. And I think the aversion to technology, can be a big one because it can be, hard to understand at times. And I think that largely presents itself in kind of two different, well, in a multitude of ways. One is, is my data ready for technology? And I think where I see, companies do really, really well at it is when they've got good data, good operations that can feed into systems that can then output, things that we can do with. Where I see them struggle is if you don't have good data integrity to begin with, your processes aren't clean, your processes aren't standard, you don't have the information to put into a system, your outputs are going to be poor. I think additional challenges show up with kind of the change management and the adoption curves of technology. I think, you from your seat have probably seen it where some companies have said, come on, give us a technology solution. You plop it in there, you drop it in, and then, the owner of the company that bought that didn't do the ample effort up front to understand what the change management curves look like. What does it take to culturally integrate something like this? What does it take to, the adoption post deployment? How is that going to look? How are we going to, I want to say force people to use it, but encourage people to use it and then grow with it, et cetera, to be able to make it, bigger than it was before. I think, what's interesting there is technology doesn't replace people, but it does change how we do our jobs.
Mhm.
Right. And I think it does require us to think differently, or it does require us to learn a new system, or it does require us to do something different one day than we did the previous day. And I think understanding that from a leadership perspective, when you go to deploy a technology, that has to be a cultural piece that you stay really, really close to, is the people are the ones that are going to enable the technology, and the leadership that drives the culture to be ready for that technology advancement is going to be critical. And I think you probably see in a lot of different places that is the scary piece about technology adoption is my company, is my culture ready to accept technology? That's kind of the hinge of whether it's successful or not.
Yeah, well said. Technology enabling and empowering people, but it is they might be doing their job a little differently, and
Yep.
learning how that can work well is a really important element. particularly of change management, but then also of enabling that opportunity across the whole business. Well, can I ask you about elements of supply chain management, such as inventory management? You mentioned logistics, also vendor relationships.
Yep.
How is technology changing this place, especially, for more modern distribution centers and those with diverse distribution channels and
Mhm.
diverse types of solutions such as DSG? How do you see technology changing that?
This is a really fun question because kind of the answer is happening all around us. Like you're experiencing it, I'm experiencing it. And what I mean there is kind of as day-to-day consumers, we're experiencing technology and distribution evolving constantly, whether we subconsciously see it or consciously see it or subconsciously see it. It's happening in front of us. Just the other day, I ordered like a new shirt from a company I hadn't done business with before. So just me as a consumer, ordered the shirt. Immediately, I go to my email to see if I got a confirmation receipt. I didn't get it. A couple days later, I got the confirmation. Then I want the tracking information. Where is it? I can't find the tracking information. When I finally got it, it took me to an external website that was different from the website that I bought it. I had to download a new app, and immediately I'm frustrated. And I don't want to do business with that company anymore because that process was not up to kind of the new standard that is consumerism for digital and technology integration. And well, I think this is a fun question. Is because that translates to business now as well. So me and you as consumers, individual consumers, that is the expectation for business to business as well. And that presents itself in supply chain that we're seeing today. And in that as a consumer, as a customer of DSGs, the growing expectation is chain of custody visibility along the entire way. And to your point in the question, you've got the vendor piece, then you have the DSG piece, and then you've got the customer piece. And what's translating from general consumerism into the B2B is I want to know what that chain of custody is. So our customers want to know, where our vendors are at in their lead times, and they want to know where their product is at TSG's value chain, and they want to know where it is on a truck. They want that level of traceability, and automation and technology is obviously allowing us to be able to do that. If you don't have the automation and technology in place to monitor and track that chain of custody and those physical and virtual moves, you can't report out on it. You can't manually do that. It's just too much to ask. What's interesting in there is we're seeing it be solved across the total value chains. There's a really interesting body of work going on in the industrial supply chain industry right now under the title of "Where's My Stuff?" And what that body of work is doing is it's bringing together competitors, DSG and competitors of the like. It's bringing together vendors. It's bringing together customers to try to solve the problem of where's my stuff. And what's fun there is it's not DSG trying to solve DSG's concerns or issues or it may be, or a vendor trying to solve their specific problems. It's the whole value chain coming together to solve a collective problem. And while that's important to bring up, is it can't be approached to solve any other way because the information handoffs between the various nodes within that value chain they have to be on the same platform. They have to be in the same conversations. They have to be done in the same way. And it's important enough to bring competitors together to try to solve that no individual company can really do it super well by themselves. It's a long answer, but it's a super fun question because it is an evolution of kind of how technology is showing up in the industry, and it bridges general consumerism and B2B and this growing expectation of where is my stuff and where can I find it, the journey we're on.
I love that story because not only can I relate to it, I feel the same way, but I think it also really highlights that dynamism where we're seeing our personal lives influence our professional lives and the
Absolutely.
expectations that we have of technology. So in that type of landscape where you described, being able to find where's my stuff, I imagine this really influences the way you think about integration as a leader of the supply chain and how technologies need to be integrated or should be. What is your take when it comes to integrating different types of technologies and how do you approach this?
First and foremost, it's inevitable, right? So I mean, the concept of modernization, the concept of evolution, the concept of adapting, the new things that are available are inevitable. I think again, the kind of us as consumers, like we lay witness to changing landscapes around us where you see companies that are winning and companies that are losing. And many situations, the companies that are losing are late to adopt, technology. So it's inevitable. It's going to happen regardless. One of my favorite leaders throws out kind of continually here, and I'll ask you the question: do you know when the best time to plant a tree is?
Oh, yes. It's like yesterday or today or 30 years ago or something like that.
That's right. All those things like 30 years ago.
Yes,
Was
yes,
probably the best.
that's
The
the
best
one.
time to plant a tree was yesterday.
Yes.
If you didn't do it yesterday, it's to do it today, right? And I
Yeah.
think that's a fun one to throw out in the concept of modernization because in technology adoption is because in many situations it gets put off. It gets put on a back burner in the spirit of it's harder, it's complicated, or I'm scared of it, or it may be. Well, the tree hasn't been planted, which means it's not growing. And I think my advice in that situation is to not be afraid of modernization. Is start planting that tree by understanding where it would make sense for your value chain today. And that doesn't mean go out and buy a bunch of technology solutions off the shelf. That's not going to work. What that means is understand your business today, understand what gaps exist, what problems you're trying to solve, and then what technologies are available to start to solve those gaps and incrementally move forward with modernization. Plant that tree and let it grow a little bit. You're not going to get a giant oak the next day, but plant that tree and foster it over the course of time to eventually get to a place of modernization, which is inevitably a journey. Maybe it's an endless journey, but a journey nonetheless.
Right on. So, can we shift a little bit to you as a leader within your organization? When it comes to balancing these kinds of initiatives, such as investing in new technologies, building integrations, and team development, how do you strike a balance between those two?
It's tricky. I'll even pause for a second, even on the word balance, because I would almost index on it's overbalancing on the team side. We kind of talked about a little bit previously of the importance of adoption and the change curves and things like that. And I think where you'll see technology struggle is where the team isn't ready for it, either culturally or from a skill set perspective or from a change management perspective. You'll see that struggle and you'll see technology adaptation happen either at a slower pace and or fail. So the aligning it to a balance, I would argue it's over indexing in the talent and the people piece to be able to enable that. Again, that comes with kind of change management and understanding where your team is at relative to the need for technology adoption and the ability to adopt it and run with it once it's deployed. Part of what makes me really really excited about DSG and the employee ownership is that ability of co-creation and collaboration. So I think anytime we pursue technology advancements, there is a roundtable of various stakeholders that come to the table to understand the different employee perspectives and the different user perspectives of how that's going to service the various needs and or enable folks to go do the things that they need to do. And I think where technology decisions are made in a silo, you're going to see challenges. I think where they're made collectively and you see due diligence of collaboration and co-creation is where you're going to see it succeed. So to that answer, I mean, to that question, I would argue that the balance isn't measured of balance. It over indexes in the team and the team's ability and willingness and acceptance to adapt to a new technology platform.
That's great. And that brings me to my next question, which is advice for other leaders. So, when you are working with other supply chain leaders, especially within the distribution space, what advice do you pass on to them or guidance do you leave them with when it comes to modernizing their operations or building up their teams?
I mean, it all starts with a firm understanding of your business. I mean, that's really where the bulk of your time should be spent in evaluating a technology solution. I think oftentimes you see individuals or companies run out to try to buy a solution in hopes that it's going to solve problems to which they may or may not understand, and that's not going to work super well. I think where you'll see it succeed is where you have the true operations discipline, you understand the true problems you're trying to solve in a very granular level, and then bridging the gap of this technology is able to do that for us. Then you'll move forward with success, as opposed to getting something you probably weren't expecting. So my advice would be to truly make sure you understand your business prior to going on the technology journey. Once you do, make sure that those technologies are solving those specific problems that you're trying to solve, and then you'll find success.
Nice. Well, my next question for you is all about the future. So, when you are looking out to the future of technology and the emerging trends that are happening now, what are you most excited about? What gives you reservation? Where do you think this is going?
I mean, you could probably guess what my answer is going to be. It's the answer that everybody's giving right now relative to
Is
this
it
question.
is it AI?
Just AI. AI is something to be feared and excited about in that question. I mean, emerging. I don't know. Is AI even emerging or is it
Right. Yeah,
I don't know.
I think it's here. I think
You
it's
think it's
here.
here? I think it's here too. I think we're AI. AI is interesting. So like it's I do think it's here and maybe it's not emerging. So there's a new answer we need to pursue there. But I mean, never have we seen a capability like AI that has just ubiquitous application in anything you can think of. Anything you can think of. You know, from a supply chain perspective, it spans an operations perspective, it spans, you know, quality control, workforce management, order picking, inventory health, purchasing, value chain management. I mean, AI has solutions and capabilities that will impact all of those things. And I think, you know, that's very exciting. It's also a little bit scary. And what is it going to output? And how do you be first to the line to adopt it? And how do you not get left behind as you know competitors and other companies go and pursue those things? It's going to be an interesting journey for us on the AI side. I think it's again it's consistent with the advice is planting my trees now, and we're understanding what AI can do for us and where we want to use it, and it'll be a journey that may never end, but we'll figure out how to adopt it.
Yeah, and to your point, I mean, so I do think that AI is here, but to your point about there are so many different things that AI could
Mhm.
potentially do and touch different parts of the business that I think all of those aspects are emerging. We're still, experimenting, learning, and then
Yeah,
applying and gaining new perspective. And then that's kind of changing our course a bit to really, invest in AI and leverage it in new and different ways. And it is an exciting time. But to your point, like those fundamentals still matter.
yeah,
Making sure we have a strong business case and understanding of the business, the right technologies in place to adopt AI, all still
yep,
really matters.
yep, and it all indexes off of good information, right? So I
Mhm.
mean that's where I anchor back to kind of the advice of make sure your business is sound and solid because the outputs of something like AI or predictive analytics is only ever going to be as good as the information that's available.
All right. Well, this has been such a great conversation. It's been such a pleasure to learn from your experience. As we wrap up, if there's anybody who wants to learn more about you or about DSG, where would you send them?
I mean, you can always reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'm probably most accessible there. If you want to learn more about DSG, go to dsgsupply.com. We have our careers page. We have all our segments covered there. You can shop DSG, etc. So it's a great place to learn about DSG is at dsgsupply.com.
Great. Thank you. We'll include those links. Dan, this has been so wonderful to chat with you. Thank you so much.
Likewise, enjoy the time.
All right, that was Dan Klepack, Chief Supply Chain Officer with Dakota Supply Group, or DSG. And to everyone listening, thank you for being a part of the future of manufacturing.